apparently some libs actually really love tariffs, but not if they're President Trump's idea. There were big protests around the country, which nobody is quite sure exactly why, because the wording was pretty vague as to what their actual mission was. And speaking of protests, Officer Brandon Tatum joins us again this week because of an event that didn't go exactly the way he had planned, and there was unfortunately some violence, obviously from the left side of the aisle. All that and more coming up on this episode of Turning Point Tonight. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Together, we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. This is Turning Point Tonight. Now, before we get to any of those stories, I have to get to this, which is kind of funny if it weren't for the fact that it had to do with violent, murderous gang members. Now, we all remember when President Trump shipped a bunch of violent gang members to El Salvador, and everyone was like, yes, this is cool, except for the libs, which for some reason wanted those people to stay in the country. Now, in that whole mix, the libs have identified a new hill to die on. According to The Atlantic, the New York Times, CNN, and a bunch of other lib outlets, unfortunately, swept up in that deportation was a Maryland father. Oh no, how terrible. They claim that this Maryland father was unfortunately mistakenly identified as a Tren de Aragua gang member and shipped off to El Salvador. Now, the Trump administration, for its part, did admit, yeah, we sent this guy by mistake, but what the libs are leaving out is a pretty gigantic caveat. Is he a member of the violent, murderous gang Tren de Aragua? No. He's actually MS-13, which I don't know how that actually makes it any better. In March of 2019, this particular individual said, well, yeah, I'm not here illegally, and was required to meet with a judge annually because he's not in the country legally. And also, according to federal documents, he's a member of MS-13. Now, the question I have to libs is this the right hill to die on? Because I'm not sure that you're going to get a ton of sympathy from the American people if your argument is he was mistakenly identified as a member of a different violent, murderous criminal gang. I don't know how much we're going to actually care about that, considering the fact that he was a member of a criminally murderous, violent gang, but not the one that he was originally thought to be a member of. Okay, good luck making that argument, libs. I'm not sure how that's going to pan out for you. Here to talk about all of that stuff and more is Turning Point content creator Bo Alford and host of the Bryce Eddy Show, Bryce. Eddy, guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us. Appreciate you.
Hey, Bryce, I want to start with you first on this one. You've done a lot of work at the border. You've seen a lot. You know a lot. I guess, how much of a difference is there from a Tren de Aragua member and an MS-13 member when it comes to protecting the safety of American citizens?
Well, listen, honestly, MS-13 is about as bad as it gets. In fact, in some respects, you can argue that they're worse. I mean, what's blow mind is that these imbeciles on the left, as long as you are supporting their narrative, I mean, they don't care what kind of murderous thugs they let in. I mean, it's something that's, I don't know, a happy thing to them. And their team is getting increasingly strange.
Yeah, it's fascinating the hills that they choose to die on. Bo, you're out in these protests all the time, and no doubt, whether or not it was this most recent protest, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but prior to that, I am sure people were talking about that to you. What are people saying about why they're not in support of deporting criminal gang members to a different country? Have you gotten any questions like that, or people answering you like that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to they will do anything possible to further their narrative. If that means welcoming MS-13 gangs into the country, if that's what it takes to get their narrative across, then that's who they're going to let in. There is no boundaries with these people as long as their narrative is what people care about. That's all they care about. And then what makes no sense to me is at these Tesla takedowns, you have people chanting, deport Elon Musk. And so yet again, if it goes with their opinions, then yeah, deport Elon Musk, but don't worry about MS-13, don't worry about gangs. Those are free, but as long as Elon Musk is deported, that's the only person we care about.
Just to be fair here, if Elon Musk was a murderous member of one of the cartels or South American gangs, I also would want him deported as well. Just to make that abundantly clear. To my knowledge, he is not a gang member of in any way, shape, or form. Speaking of pushing the narratives, Bo, you brought up a good point. The whole tariffs things, it's difficult to avoid talking about it, even though there are so many other things going on in the world. And so I guess with a little bit of levity and humor, here are some MAGA right-wing extremists defending tariffs. Watch this clip and we'll discuss.
In terms of tariffs, I think it's interesting to note that the average U.S. MFN tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States is 2%, whereas the average Chinese MFN tariff on U.S. goods going into China is 35%. Is that reciprocal?
Further, what they have said is that we need to not worry about manufacturing in America, because what we should establish is a policy of unfettered free trade. We don't need tariffs. What we need is to allow corporate America the freedom to throw American workers out on the street, people who are making 15, 20, 25 bucks an hour, healthcare, pensions, throw them out on the street, because somehow, Madam President, we are going to create wealth in America and good paying jobs in America as we shut down plants, we move to China, corporations there pay workers 20, 30 cents an hour, and we bring the product back into this country.
It's also proper for advanced economies like the United States to insist on reciprocity from nations like China that are no longer solely poor countries, to make sure that they're providing access to their markets and that they stop taking intellectual property and hacking our servers.
Yeah, well, there you go. Nancy Pelosi, pointing to a chart that I agree with. I've never thought I'd say that. But Bo, you kind of saw Nancy Pelosi, saw Bernie Sanders and Barack Obama defending the ideas of tariffs, except for they don't like them now. What are your thoughts on just the overall lib perspective of this is great until President Trump says it's great, then it's awful?
Yeah. So, I mean, my immediate thought is this goes to show how far the left has gone. They used to be moderate, and that sounds crazy to even think about. But I mean, take a look back at Barack Obama, who wasn't bad on immigration. He actually had quite a few deportations, if you look back in the day. And then now, fast forward to Joe Biden, last term, he allowed millions upon millions of illegal immigrants. It just goes to show how far left they have gone. And then taking it over to tariffs, like I said with the last story, it's just whatever furthers the leftist narrative. So if tariffs are something that Trump supports, then they are not going to support tariffs. Anything Trump supports, they will not support. It doesn't matter if it's giving money to St. Jude, they're not going to support it.
Bryce, yeah, to your point, Bo, yeah, those are all seems to be accurate the way that I'm looking at things. Bryce, is there a different approach the Trump administration maybe should take? Maybe they should take some stances that Trump doesn't actually think in order to make the libs think the opposite, which Trump does actually think, and therefore be in support of things that conservatives / the Republican Party would be in favor of. I know that was kind of like a twisty gymnastics thing, but is there a different approach that should be taken?
That would be like 6D chess or something like that. Maybe that's what we should start doing. But the truth is here, what you're witnessing, and I have a little bit different take than you guys maybe, but what you're witnessing is these folks just want to accumulate political power. So what you're seeing is there's no principles here. They have zero principles. They are going to say whatever it takes to accumulate political power. And we're seeing that right now with Gavin Newsom on his tour, where he's all of a sudden running to the middle because he thinks that that's going to bring him political power. So what we're witnessing is really just the naked left. And by the way, you don't actually want to witness the naked left because they accumulate ugliness. I rescued a kid the other day out of a Tesla protest. I walked to the other side and I started chatting with people. And of course, none of them had any real positions that they understood. They couldn't articulate things, but there's this 25-year-old kid who, was a roofer, had some questions about things, was willing to engage in conversation. And I said, hey, listen, man, you pursue truth long enough, you're going to end up on the other side of the street with me. And later on that day, I was able to take him out for a beer, and he came to church the next morning. And
Wow.
but I kept introducing him by saying, "Listen, I told this kid he was too handsome to be on this side of the aisle, because all these people over here are freaks who are paid, most of them, to be there, or at least a good contingent of them. And so all of these protests across the country are really just entirely set up to try to create this energy that everybody in the world's against Trump and everything that he's doing is bad. And we have to just hold the line and keep going in the direction that we know is true."
I'll take that one to the bank. Bryce, Eddy, don't risk blindness by looking at the literal naked left. Good advice. Hey, so when the couple seconds that we've got left, Bryce, you brought up a really good point that a bunch of the protesters seem to be paid. Bo, you were at the DC protest, and you posted a video where you left for a couple minutes to change outfits because you've been identified or whatever it was, and you came back, nobody was there. Can you kind of explain that in the couple of seconds we got left?
Yes, yeah, it was insane. So I left for the hotel room for about 30 minutes. Our camera was tampered with, broken by a protester, but that's something else. We can talk about it another time. And so we come back, and the protest, when I tell you it is absolutely empty, I mean, you saw the video, not a single soul there. In a matter of give or take 30 minutes. It just shocks me. Like, how can 30,000 plus people all leave in a 30-minute time span? But I guess when you're getting paid, when your time is done, it's time to clock out. And I guess they knew that their time,
The
their time
work
was
bell
like,
rang.
exactly.
Yeah, well, the only other theory would be like, we are fighting fascism until noon, and then I got stuff to do. Bryce, Eddy, Bo, Alford, thanks for joining us, guys. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course.
Awesome. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Coming up, we check in with Turning Point's White House correspondent Monica Page, as well as Officer Brandon Tatum, who had a really interesting event at UC Davis last week. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.